Thank you. Well, thank you for inviting me here, and glad to speak on this motion. I think the Catholic Church has certainly become irrelevant to the search for truth about reality. Every generation we find out more and more about how the universe operates naturally. Every generation, those bits that we don't yet understand, religious people attribute to gods. And there's a ceaseless flow, with nothing going in the opposite direction, of religious explanations for reality being overtaken and replaced by natural scientific explanations for reality. And so the bits that gods are supposed to be in charge of or responsible for become smaller and smaller and less relevant. And the Catholic God, who began as a mighty God who created the entire universe and impregnated a virgin in order to give birth to himself, has turned into a God that nowadays is reduced mostly to appearing on pieces of toast. So the Catholic Church responds to that sometimes by trying to be more relevant, saying that it accepts, for example, scientific theories like evolution, but claiming that, well, actually, God guided evolution. That doesn't stand up to any analysis in terms of their theology, because if you lose Adam and Eve, you lose original sin. If you lose original sin, you lose the reason for Jesus to be crucified. And you also have to explain where along the evolutionary chain the first soul arrived. So these attempts to fudge theology by claiming that you accept scientific evidence don't really work. And so sometimes the Catholic Church reverts to just the easier path of just sticking with the silliness and saying, yes, let's take transubstantiation, perhaps the silliest of all religious doctrines, that pieces of bread and volumes of wine literally become the body and blood of the creator of the universe every time a validly ordained Catholic priest on the planet Earth decides to utter a certain set of magical words. And that particular theory is central to Catholicism, central to the doctrine of Catholicism, yet it's so silly that even most Irish Catholics don't accept it. There was a recent MRBI poll a few months ago that showed that 75% of Irish Roman Catholics don't believe in transubstantiation. 50% of Irish Roman Catholics don't believe in hell. 15% of Irish Catholics don't believe that Jesus was the Son of God. And my personal favourite, 8% of Irish Roman Catholics don't believe in God, which I would have thought would have been a pretty low hurdle for the Catholic Church being relevant. The second area where the Catholic Church is no longer relevant is in the search for morality. And morality, contrary to the suggestion that it depends on some manner of supernatural lawgiver, morality is about how we treat other sentient beings. It's about whether our behaviour and decisions cause unnecessary suffering or help other sentient beings to thrive and help their well-being.
Point forward.
Yeah.
Why?
Why what?
Why does it? Why is that source of morality?
Because we have evolved as human beings, and as well as physically evolving, we have evolved a sense of morality that all animals have. We're just animals, that all animals have in terms of how they relate to each other, and that the ability to cooperate together and the ability to show our natural compassion and empathy and reciprocity enables species to thrive more than the opposite.
Point of order.
Yeah.
How would you account for altruism in the view that you just put forward?
I've just explained it. It's evolutionarily advantageous
For
species to be altruistic. Let's say hypothetically, if you accept that morality, and I think let's imagine that there's no religion for a second. Most of us would accept that morality is broadly to do with how we treat other sentient beings. It's broadly the way that the author Sam Harris puts it is that if morality means anything, the worst possible world is a world in which every sentient and conscious being is suffering to the maximal extent all of the time. There cannot be, wherever you think the source of morality, that is the worst possible world. And if you accept that as a basis, then whatever the source, if you're moving away from that type of world, you're moving towards good, and if you're moving towards that type of world, you're moving towards bad. And it's a pretty complicated thing. Like, nobody's saying that it's easy, because there's so many interrelated effects and consequences of any decision that you make. However, what religion does is it adds into that already complicated task a whole load of irrelevant stuff, saying that even if your compassion and your empathy and your sense of reciprocity causes you to believe that you should do something, that should be overridden by the fact that somebody thinks that the creator of the universe wrote something down 2,000 years ago, or 1,300 years ago, or whatever your particular religion says. And particularly in terms of the Catholic Church, which claims, as you're suggesting, to have this objective, unchanging morality that comes from God, and yet has no problem institutionally saying, we didn't realise until a few years ago that it was a bad thing to rape children. We didn't have guidelines, but now we understand. It's the utter hypocrisy of the Catholic Church that claims that their crimes should be judged by the standards of several decades ago, and yet simultaneously claims that there is a natural, unchanging morality that they stick to. It's the same type of hypocrisy that allows Cardinal Cormac Murphy-O'Connor to tell the BBC that atheists are not fully human. It's the same type of hypocrisy in terms of morality that allows the Catholic Church to claim that attempting to ordain a woman as a priest is on the same level of seriousness of a moral crime as raping a child. And that's actual Catholic Church documentation, that in case anybody's feeling like that, I can give them the citations later.
Right.
But
That's untrue.
Sorry.
okay, I'll give you the quote later on. But the final point that I want to make is that, okay, I'll just take 10 seconds, is that in practical terms, the Catholic Church has become irrelevant to the ordinary lives of day-to-day people. And that's the absolute test. In real life, most people just get on with their lives, they deal with each other on a moral basis, they accept scientific evidence as the basis for most of the things that they do in their life, and they ignore the theological doctrines that come from the Catholic Church. And so the Catholic Church on that basis, I would suggest, is irrelevant to the search for the truth about reality, irrelevant to the quest for morality, and irrelevant to the ordinary lives of day-to-day people. Thank you very much.